When I go to buy a game and I see this and this and this, I'm always a bit skeptical, especially when it comes to Warhammer games. I've played tabletop Warhammer for a long, long time. I've even got a whole other YouTube channel that I do battle reports on. But while it's cool to see the universe from a video game perspective, there's no doubt that there's a few Warhammer games that are not spectacular. So when I went into Necromunda Hired Gun, I wasn't expecting much in terms of gameplay. But what I got was this. Let's get the bad out of the way. The game is in no way perfect. There's a few bugs, load-ins are weird, some textures change as I'm looking at them. Ambots can drill into an area that's 20 feet off the ground, and frame stutters happen quite often. Also, the audio mixing was a bit strange.
Working for the old man again.
I don't like what I'm hearing, Jericho. You know her.
For me, though, my biggest critique is the game's lack of navigation. Now, I'm not great with directions, so keep that in mind, but there were many times throughout my playthrough where I got lost in an area for 5 to 10 minutes, looking around and wondering what to do or where to go. There's no objective markers, no arrows, and not many visual cues to guide you. When I really wanted to just get into the action, this was a big momentum killer for me. Now, I'm all for no hand-holding in a game. Like in Dark Souls, the game doesn't tell you anything when it comes to the objectives, or where to go. But that works in that game because the areas are well-defined with clear paths you can explore. However, Necromunda Hired Gun is claustrophobic and cluttered. Pathways and key items blend into the grim lighting and the rusty shadows. When you're moving at 100 miles per hour like you do in most of the game, it's easy to miss some things. Aesthetically, it fits the setting perfectly, but I think it could have greatly benefited from a simple objective arrow telling the player where they need to go, or even a compass, just something to help out with the navigation. The AI isn't anything special, but they do the job. Some were smart enough to flank me, but other than a constant push forward, they don't really do much. I would have loved to see them interacting with the Underhive more, ducking behind cover or hiding in vents or climbing over pipes, just something to give them a little more flavor. My biggest complaint when it comes to the enemies is that there are a few weird damage values for their weapons. Many times I thought that I had a good amount of health, only to be seemingly one-shot by a stray auto gunshot or a power hammer. The Ambot missiles specifically were very devastating. Whenever I saw one fired, it was almost a guaranteed kill if it hit me. I also think that some of the movement mechanics were unnecessary. Wall running and sliding was nice to have, but I don't think I ever really used them in combat. This is because unlike in Titanfall, you have to hold down the spacebar to wall run, and because of how cluttered the environments are, there aren't really any good places to do it. Sliding, on the other hand, isn't used to conserve your momentum out of a jump, it's just kind of something you can do. They didn't take away anything per se, but when it came to fights I found myself depending on the double jump, grapple hook, and dash more than anything. This resulted in wall running becoming more of a mechanic for platforming sections, and sliding something I did whenever I wanted to look cool. I also think that the menus need a little reworking, specifically the menu to upgrade your weapons. I really would have liked if they made moving around attachments on guns easier, so you didn't have to go through each one to see what was equipped with what. When upgrading my character, there were several abilities that they didn't actually provide a tutorial on how to use, or even a keybind. I had to look in the keybind section of the game to see what they were bound to, and actually there was one ability that didn't have a binding at all. Needless to say, I played through the game without that one. Now, my final critique isn't much of a critique, but I know some people will view it as a negative, so I should say now that the game is short. It took me around 8 hours to beat it on my first playthrough, and I spent a good amount of time doing side missions. Now, this isn't really a problem with me, especially since it's a $40 game that I got for $33 on sale, and there is replayability with different character builds, but I should mention it. Those are my critiques. It's a bit of a lengthy one, but again, the game's not perfect. Now that those are out of the way, let's get into the good. Despite how much I said in the critique section, I don't think any of it got in the way of me having fun. That's the best part about the game. It's just fun. There's a story that's heavily dialogue driven, and I skipped most of it because I didn't really care and it seemed a little dense. But when you're doing what the game wants you to do, it sure is a blast. The best part about the game, I think, is how well it matches the 40k aesthetic. That's something that most 40k games can at least get right. Well, most of them. Environments are cramped, industrial catwalks, walls are covered in rust, and dangerous factory machines operate on an endless loop without a care who they might harm. There's abandoned sentinels, references to characters from different factions, and just a whole lot to love if you're a 40k fan. When it comes to gameplay, the weapons and shooting feel great. Bolters are heavy and slow but pack a powerful round. Autoguns feel lighter but handle much better. Grav guns make miniature black holes that suck people in, and plasma guns make a cool shooting sound and explode people into little bits. Combat itself is good, hit detection is solid, the arenas make good use of the movement mechanics, and the enemies are threatening enough to force you to stay on the move. I really enjoy taking on a whole group of gangers, flying through the air and grappling over to a better vantage point. It's one of those games that forces you into a zone, but when you're in that zone, it feels awesome. Although, nothing quite helps you get into the zone like the soundtrack. The soundtrack is awesome. It's great at setting the mood, and makes for terrific moments when you're blasting apart gangers. So those are my thoughts on Necromunda Hired Gun. Not perfect by any stretch, but a whole lot of fun anyways. Through and through, I enjoyed my time with it. It's one of the better 40k games in my opinion, and with a few patches I think this could easily be a really great game. I'm interested to see if they do any DLC, and what they decide to do with it, if they do it. 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching, see you guys next time, also follow me on Twitch, thank you.